Well, new questions today about transparency in the Obama administration as reports surface that EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson is one of several officials under congressional investigation for allegedly using a private email and an alias. And the motivation is allegedly so that she could skirt the rules and hide controversial correspondence from the public, the press, and even internal EPA inspectors. And she's not the only one being implicated. Joining me now with more, Brad Blakeman, former deputy assistant to President George W. Bush, and Marjorie Clifton, former consultant to the Obama campaign and principal at Clifton Consulting. Okay, so this House committee has launched an investigation into whether Ms. Jackson is trying to get around public disclosure laws, because if you talk about it, for the most part, as a government employee, we get to see it. You know, that we get to file a Freedom of Information request, and you have to give it over to us. That's why, if you're thinking about emailing President Obama anytime soon, know that it's all going to be, you know, on a matter of public record and retrievable for the ages. So Ms. Jackson, according to this House committee, found a way around that by establishing an alias email under the name of Richard Windsor. Is there any proof of this, Brad? Where is this coming from?
Well, this actually, from what I understand, came from the IG himself over at EPA. But having said that, what good reason, if we used common sense, would there be for a high government official to have a fictitious email account? The fact is that it smells, just in and of itself, that a high government official would feel it's necessary to have a fictitious email account and then to use that email account for conducting government business. There should be a zero-tolerance policy on an administration who promised transparency and openness when they've been everything but. If a high-level official like the EPA administrator is allowed to get away with this, then what message does it send to the rest of the government officials who are supposed to be working for the people and not working behind their back?
Marjorie, apparently there's a man named Chris Horner, who's a senior fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute and also a vocal critic of this administration and its environmental policies, who's researching a book, and he claims he is the one who discovered that Lisa Jackson is using this alias, Richard Windsor, and having, you know, doing official business under a fake name. Apparently, these House Republicans take it so seriously that they've launched this investigation into it. What do you make of it?
Yeah, no, as they should, and absolutely it's necessary to be clear on whether government employees are using alternative email addresses. I mean, when a government employee actually uses a government computer, they have to hit a consent button that says, look, we can look at anything that you write. You know, in this case, again, these are all allegations. It came when they were writing this book, and she provided this alternative email address, and they said, wait a minute, you can't do that with government business. Now, this is not a foreign concept. This happened within the Bush administration. There was a huge U.S. Attorney General scandal where the Republican convention had created an alternative domain that they were using and then discovered, wait a minute, you can't do this. So absolutely, we need to understand what's actually happening here. Is it indicative of an epidemic or a policy of the Obama administration? Well, that's not necessarily fair to say, but we do need to find out what is happening. She should have come up with a more creative alias, I think. You know, Donald Duck.
Right before we went to air, we were sitting here thinking, you know, if you play around with that name, does it get you in trouble? Is it some sort of inappropriate? I don't know. I don't think so. We weren't able to find any combo. But
Downton Abbey, I don't know. Richard Windsor.
I don't know. Maybe it's like her husband or something. I mean, could it be completely innocent, Brad? And
right.
I mean, is there any circumstance under which this is allowed? Some business gets done on the EPA website and through the emails, and some doesn't.
No, as somebody who worked in the West Wing as a senior staff member of the White House, if any of us had an alias that we were using as our own email, would certainly raise red flags as to why we felt it was necessary to do something like that. Even the president would not be allowed to do the types of things that is alleged against the EPA administrator. So certainly anybody who would have that kind of name, feel the necessity to do it, and to conduct government business if it's found that has occurred, should be fired, because there is no good excuse for that type of activity. And she's not skirting the rules. She's flaunting the rules and breaking the rules.
Well, it could be, allegedly, this could violate the law. So, I mean, that's a bigger problem for, you know, potentially, depending on where this goes. Before the election, Marjorie, we covered some stories about whether the EPA was planning to unleash a string of new regulations that would be controversial if Barack Obama won a second term, and whether the administration was trying to keep that under the lid because it might be politically damaging to, you know, some of his critics, to him, thanks to some of his critics. Is that what could be in the Richard Windsor email? I mean, if that's the kind of stuff that was, you know, this email was being used for, we're going to see it and we're going to find out about it, right?
Right, absolutely. I mean, anything that is, if there is anything suspicious, it will be uncovered. But at this moment, it's all speculation. I mean, the fact that this woman actually referred this gentleman to this email account might say one of two things. One, she wasn't aware that the fact that there's a fake name is a little bit strange, no question. But it could be a number of many different things. I mean, even at looking at this whole Patriot scandal, sort of begs the question of, how are government officials in any circumstance having a private life by email and then, their public life. But absolutely anything they put over government or government business should be done in government email. And that's really the thing in question.
Yeah, and then we get to look. And that's a thrill a minute to pour through the government emails and go over all the correspondence they've had. Although who knows, maybe the Richard Windsor account will be more interesting than most. Panel, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, Secretary Hillary